views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Thank you for joining us. Our guest today is a former financial journalist for CNBC, and she was also a candidate in last year's 14th Congressional District primary. It's my pleasure to welcome Michelle Caruso Cabrera. Nice to have you with us, Mrs. Caruso Cabrera.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Gary.
Just to let people know, we ran a forum for candidates for Comptroller, and Ms. Caruso Cabrera was unavoidably unable to attend. And so we thought we would spend a few moments with her, ask her the same questions, do it in exactly the same format, and give her the opportunity to present her campaign to the people of the Bronx. So let's get right to it. You will have 1 minute to answer each one of these questions. Let's start with a very fundamental question for the people of the Bronx. In the Bronx, the tale of two cities is real. The numbers don't lie. The Bronx is the poorest borough in the city, with a median household income below $40,000 and a poverty rate of 26.2%. Of course, this has numerous implications on many aspects of life in the city's northernmost boroughs. So what are the issues that hold people in the Bronx back financially? And if you are Comptroller, how would you address them?
Gary, thanks so much. My number one goal as Comptroller will be to lead an economic recovery for New York that is equitable, inclusive, and leaves no one behind. So reversing those statistics that you talked about in the Bronx are essential to that recovery that is inclusive. As you mentioned, I ran for Congress in the Bronx at the height of the pandemic last year, and I saw with my own eyes the horrific inequities that occurred when it came to the coronavirus, the death rates, the sickness rates, and then the financial impact that now has the highest unemployment in the Bronx of all the boroughs. As Comptroller, what does that mean? It means following the money. That's what I've done for 30 years when I was a journalist, following the money and ensuring that it is being spent on what it's supposed to be spent on.
15 seconds.
Making sure we have outcomes that lead to higher jobs, better smaller businesses, improving small businesses, and improving the economy for everyone across the 5 boroughs.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about healthcare. With Bronx epidemics and asthma, diabetes, drug addiction, and obesity, it was likely that once the pandemic hit, the borough would see some very gruesome numbers. And tragically, that did play out in infections, hospitalizations, and ultimately COVID deaths, unfortunately. The irony, though, could not be more stark. This is a borough that has a large healthcare industry, and we have some of the city's best hospitals in the Bronx as well. Yet, health disparities rage. How should the next Comptroller address this?
Gary, I have spent decades covering crises all over the world. And here's what I have seen over and over again. Those who can least afford to pay are the ones who pay the most. And I am running for Comptroller precisely because that's what I see happening here, particularly in the Bronx, with the inequities that you talk about in public health. If we are going to have a comeback that is inclusive, reversing those horrific public health outcomes are extremely important. I want you to ask yourself the following question. The budget under Bill de Blasio is $20 billion bigger than when he came into office. And does this city feel $20 billion better to you?
15 seconds.
It's not how much we are spending, it's that we're spending it badly. And as Comptroller, we have to do it better so that we don't have those horrible numbers that you talk about in the Bronx.
All right, thank you very much. The issues are stark and maybe somewhat obvious. Let's talk about housing. Let's talk about NYCHA in particular. There was a recent story in the news about Bronx River houses being without heat for more than 3 months, obviously an absolutely unacceptable situation. And that's really only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to NYCHA issues. First of all, do you favor the privatization of some of NYCHA's property? And secondly, is there more that can be done at NYCHA other than simply waiting for a federal funding package?
which is what we often hear over and over again. To answer your question directly, no, I do not believe that we should privatize NYCHA. There are already buildings, NYCHA buildings, that are being privately managed. And I hear from those residents that they're still having issues with living conditions that can be deplorable, whether it's vermin, lead paint, inadequate heating, which is dangerous. Yes, for the last couple of winters, we had mild winters, but this is a very tough winter. It's causing, look what's happened in Texas. It can be fatal. So that is unsafe. That cannot happen. What can the controller do?
30 seconds.
The controller's job is to follow the money. I have done that for 30 years and ask the hard questions and ensure that every dollar that we get from the federal government is going to improving the lives of the people who live in NYCHA so they can live there with dignity.
All right, thank you very much. Let's talk unemployment. The Bronx had been doing considerably better with unemployment. It was down to 4.4% a year ago, which are very encouraging numbers. Unfortunately, then the pandemic hit and everything changed. And we're at more than 15% unemployed right now, and it was as high as 16% last month. What can be done to energize the labor market for Bronxites?
Yeah, it's devastating. I've seen those numbers up close, and I've seen it on the streets as well when I see people who are in line for food pantries. And that's something that absolutely has to be reversed. As controller, I want to scrutinize every dollar to ensure that what the next mayor and the next city council do when they spend money, that they are focused on a comeback that is equitable and inclusive and leaves no one behind. And what does that mean? It means making sure that the money is spent on things that bring back jobs, help our small businesses, and bring investment back to New York so we can get people back to work. It has got to be a top priority.
15 seconds. Okay, you got it done. Thank you so much. This, I suppose, is a related question. Let's talk about small businesses. The minimum wage in the state will hit $15 an hour in July. Some small business owners say that puts an extra burden on them. They also complain about being taxed and regulated, in some cases, right out of existence. If you are controller, what do you say to small business owners who have been devastated by the pandemic and to this day are struggling to stay alive? Also, let's talk a little bit about how you see the health of Bronx shopping districts in places like Fordham, neighborhoods like Burnside, Wakefield, and Soundview.
So I've spent a lot of time with the BIDs, the business improvement districts up in the Bronx. There's nearly a dozen of them. You've got them in Throgs Neck, Westchester Square, 3rd Avenue, Fordham Road. First thing as controller, I call all of them and say, what can I do to help? Because to your point, businesses feel like the city nickels and dimes them, that the city doesn't care about them. And we need to care about them because they're going to be crucial to helping turn around that terrible unemployment figure that you're talking about. Now, when it comes to the minimum wage, I don't hear from business owners concerns about the minimum wage. I hear concerns about lack of customers, lack of revenue. They want to see the vaccine distributed as quickly as possible so people go back shopping, eating in restaurants. They're not afraid to come back to offices or the work site. And 50. Also, when it comes to the business improvement districts, they want help with homelessness. They've done a lot of work. And I have a friend who lives near 3rd Avenue. She says, I loved all the outdoor seating area, but now I can't sit there because there are homeless people there. We need to solve the homeless crisis, and that will improve foot traffic. So that's what business owners need. They need the city to do their job well. And as controller, I'll scrutinize every dollar to make sure it's being spent on outcomes that help small businesses.
Let's talk next about the funding of the NYPD. According to the City Budget Commission, the operating budget for police is at $5.6 billion. What is your vision on crime-fighting budgets in relation to other less direct initiatives that can help to lower crime, like community centers, social services, etc.?
Yeah, I think we can all agree that when it comes to the NYPD, the communities they're sworn to protect and serve, they've failed some of them. Blacks, Latinos, LGBT, the Asian communities, and the historical pattern of misconduct, brutality, that has to come to an end. At the same time, we have to deal with the rising levels of crime that we've seen during the pandemic. We've had a spike in murders, in shootings, robberies. People feel unsafe to go in the subway. You know, when I look back during the summer when we were when I was running for Congress, and we were having this national conversation about how do we reform the police in the wake of the death of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. We need to refocus on those reform efforts.
15 seconds.
As comptroller, what does that mean? I want to audit the police department, and I want money to be moved away from over policing and more towards evidence-based programs that improve the relationship between the police and the people they're sworn to protect and serve, while also delivering outcomes that improve and reduce the crime levels across the city.
Thank you very much. Here's something that's not talked about a lot. Let's talk a little bit more about funding priorities. Last year, the city decimated culture budgets by 60%. The full expenditure on these programs is a paltry $6 million for the entire city. Yet there is extensive data that programs like music and art keep children in school, keep them engaged and focused, improve their SAT scores, and also, let's put it honestly, it lowers crime, especially youth crimes. These are important staple programs that have been cut for thousands of Bronx children. Is there room in the city's budget to fund music and arts programs to keep crime down and help children achieve in schools?
You bet there is. It's an imperative. And I know this specifically because I'm the president of the Ballet Hispanico. I've been on that board for 15 years. It was founded 50 years ago by a Latin American immigrant named Tina Ramirez. We have a ballet school, we have an internationally known company, and we do outreach to the public schools in the city. And yes, that budget was decimated. I can tell you that those programs are crucial to children.
30 seconds.
They help them with their self-worth, their sense of discipline. And you're right, the data doesn't lie. They improve the outcomes when it comes to schools and grades. As comptroller, I would fight for every dollar to stay because they are absolutely crucial
50.
to helping New York City recover in a way that is equitable and inclusive.
Thank you for that. We will take care of our closing statements right now. And so we'll give you 90 seconds for a closing statement. Michelle Caruso Cabrera, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Gary, for hosting me tonight. I have spent decades covering financial crises all over the world. And over again, I have seen it, that those who can least afford to pay for a crisis end up paying the most. They bear the biggest burden. And that is why I am running for comptroller, because it's already happening here in New York City. I have seen it with my own eyes. I am not a career politician. I have 30 years of experience, not 30 years of political favors that have to be paid back. I will bring a fresh perspective, an objective perspective to scrutinizing every dollar that we spend. That's the role of the comptroller. And if we are going to turn the tide in this city, we need to have someone who is unafraid of scrutinizing every dollar, asking the hard questions about how the money is being spent. I don't know who the next mayor is going to be. I don't know who the next round of city council folks are going to be, but I can assure you that as comptroller, I will be the financial watchdog to make sure every dollar is about helping this city come back and making sure that we leave no one behind.
Thank you very much, Michelle Caruso Cabrera. We were sorry you weren't able to make the program the other day, but I know you know that BronxNet Television feels real strongly about making sure everybody has the opportunity. So we wish you good luck in your campaign, and we certainly appreciate you taking a few minutes out to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Gary. A pleasure to be here.
For our viewers, let's just get you some voting information. I know, like all the candidates, Ms. Caruso Cabrera encourages everybody who's eligible to vote to get out and vote. The Democratic primary for comptroller is June 22nd. You can register to vote by May 28th. You can request an absentee ballot between May 23rd and June 15th. Mail-in and absentee ballots must be postmarked by June 22nd. Of course, that is the primary day. And again, the general election for comptroller is way in November, on November 2nd. So if you'd like more information, you can visit vote.nyc. And again, thanks to Michelle Caruso Cabrera, and we appreciate you joining us today.